guys, welcome to She Knows. Why did I do that? Hi guys, what is that? Um, Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica, and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Justino Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know what to talk about because there's a lot of things to talk about, but I figure that at every single show, like towards the end, you guys are like, "Oh, I have this question. I have this question." So I'm just thinking we will kind of go through what's going on, at Arsenal, and then you guys can also like ask questions because over the last couple of weeks it's definitely been like, oh, my edge control. Um a lot of questions around like, hey Jess, who do you think should be playing in that left 8 position? Hey Jess, who do you think would be the right striker, to replace Lacazette? And questions like that. So it's never really like felt like an appropriate time to talk about it like at the end of a like player ratings or whatever. So I just thought maybe today would be a good time to like address some of that stuff and other questions that you guys have in and amongst some of the hot topics of today. We've been linked with Darwin Nunez, a striker from Benfica, Uruguayan. He's somebody that I brought up maybe like 4 months ago, and I was kind of talking about how I thought he was like the right profile and how I really like the player. He's quite young and playing in the Portuguese league, which obviously doesn't have like the same level of competition. But we can talk about what you guys think about him. We've also been linked with Osimhen, so two completely different types of players. One that's playing in one of the big 5 leagues, doing his thing, and then the other one playing in the Portuguese league. So we can compare and contrast the two. And then Saliba and Bukayo Saka are going to be offered new contracts. Bukayo Saka is apparently in contract talks as of now. Arsenal are willing to triple his wages that he's on now to get him to stay at Arsenal or just continue the journey. And Saliba soon, not quite yet, but soon will be offered a new contract. So big things happening at Arsenal, and we're also sitting in 4th. There's been a lot of discourse on the socials around whether or not Arsenal should be celebrating as much as they are. Suck it. We're going to do whatever we want. Like, get over it. And also just, do we need to be changing things now? Do we need to look for another solution if Lacazette is unable to score the goals? Should we be looking to maybe bring Martinelli through the center? Should Emile Smith-Rowe be playing in the Xhaka position? We can talk about that as well, because I find that to be something that like it's consistently brought up. Even after those players play well, it's consistently brought up. So it's definitely something that you guys love to talk about. So there's about 40 of you guys watching right now. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Justin Credible says, hi Jess. Hey Justin, how are you? Nashville says jazz hands. That's what it looked like. Like, what a freak. Like, hey guys, like, I'm so awkward. It's just so weird. Justin Credible says, have you seen the player salaries in terms of who Arsenal, or I saw that Manchester United's wage bill has been going around as well as ours. So I have kind of seen some of it, but I haven't really looked like deep into it. But let me know like what you're thinking in terms of that. Matt G says, evening all. Hey Jess, evening to you as well. You guys, I'm like, so I didn't get like good sleep last night. So I'm serious about my sleep, right? Like, so serious. Like I have to have temperature perfect. I like to go to bed early. I do not play. I take my melatonin gummies, and I also have my CBD so I can like really get into the groove. And for some reason I didn't get good sleep, and I have coffee like literally it's 3:00 here in LA. It's pathetic, but here we are, Yes. Dublin Gunner says, flippin' hell, the lead judges TV chat lads are an angry lot. Thank God you're here and relax. I'm chilling. I mean, the best thing for me is that we're going into this international break with being in 4th place. And not only that, but winning 2 of our last 3 games, obviously one of them being a really difficult one in Liverpool, and going into this international break, potentially, without the win, maybe losing 2 games and only winning 1 would have been very tense. Is that a word? Very tense, very tense. for these last 2 weeks, especially because Spurs ended up winning their game. And if you just kind of back up to August, I think we went into the first international break after like losing those first 3 games, and it wasn't fun. Like it wasn't fun. So for me, it's kind of like, thank God we did that. And so now we can enjoy our international break. And I think the mood is so much different. The type of content that you create when you're going to an international break in a healthy position is so much more fun to talk about the good stuff. And so yeah, I'm happy to go into this international break feeling good about the team. AFC Mush says thoughts on Lee Gunner. Jesse Neal tweets. So yeah, I seen the clip going around. I also like retweeted it and said my little bit on it, where Terry from the Football Terrace was kind of pressing Lee about giving Arteta credit and just backing Arteta because of what he's achieved so far this season. And obviously like the usual tropes about like, oh well, they tore down the old stadium and said that we were going to be competing with Barcelona and Bayern Munich. Yeah, that's true. And yes, they didn't. We haven't really seen that. We know that they failed on that promise. In terms of like the Cronkies and the ownership at that time, they took us from Highbury, and now we're in the Emirates, and we haven't been successful. Like we really have just went through a slow and steady decline since then. And so I understand being upset about that. But when you see the club trying to make changes to go in the right direction, for me, I could not sit there and just force misery on myself just because like I'm mad. I'm mad, and like that's what I want to create content around. I just think it's forced at this point, and you don't have to be 100% behind Mikel Arteta and thinking that this is the perfect solution. But right now we're sitting in fourth, winning games, playing good football, and the team is freaking likable. I think that's the biggest thing. Is it'd be really hard for me to sit around and talk shit about Ben White, talk crap about Odegaard, call him Wodegaard or whatever, as he's been called, or Ben Shite, or all these like little things that are made up by our own fans. It's weird. And so I like the team that's playing right now. I see that they're playing for the badge and playing for the manager. It's just very difficult to be like negative when there's not really a lot to be negative about. Even the most negative Arsenal fans that I know of have kind of changed their tune over the last couple of weeks. And that's because now they're seeing good football, attacking football. We're very dominant in a lot of games. And so he's not really somebody that my views are aligned with. So, but equally, I just like let him do his thing. It is what it is. If that's what you want to build your brand around and that's kind of like your thing, then more power to you. But I wouldn't say that like I would place too much time on what he says, because I'm not quite sure that it's coming from a genuine place. That's just me. So that's my thing on him. Captain Joka says Nunez and João Felix would build the Portuguese camp at Arsenal with Tavares and Cedric here already. Darwin Nunez is Uruguayan from my recollection. Let me make sure that that's right. I think he is. At first, I thought, just like you, Captain Joka, that he was Portuguese as well. But let me look. Darwin Nunez. Yeah, he's Uruguayan. So a lot of people compare him to his name just floated right out of my head. The guy that he's Cavani, because they're both Uruguayan, big, tall, strong center forwards. And yeah, so on my little wish list for the summer, I have João Felix plus somebody else. And so Darwin Nunez would definitely be someone else that I would be interested in. The issue with João Felix plus Nunez is that that's a lot of cash right there, because Benfica, they won a lot of money for Darwin Nunez, and it makes sense because a lot of players that have left the Portuguese league have left for a lot of money. One of them being João Felix. He kind of set the standard of how much teams should be paying for players coming out of that league. Even if you look at Bruno Fernandes, he cost like what, 40-50 million to Manchester United from Sporting. So I think that Nunez would cost a lot. Probably upwards of 60 million. And then when you add that to João Felix, that's a lot. The one thing I will say is that João Felix can play more than one position. So if you could bring him in. You would be paying for somebody that could play left wing and through the center and number 10. But yeah, I would love both of those players. I'm just not sure how feasible it is in terms of financially, if we're willing to put out that amount of money. I would love to see it though. Let's see what you guys are saying. All right, let's see. Matt G has a question. Jess, if the season ended today with us fourth, do any Arsenal players get into the Premier League team of the season? That's a really good question. I would say that it would be difficult because we know how these things go. Team of the season, player of the season, all those types of things are quite political, and it depends on what team you're on. I would say that the players that we have playing in the forward positions probably would have a shout, and in particular, Bukayo Saka. But does he get in over Mo Salah? No. I think Saka has a really good chance of being the PFA Young Player of the Year. That's where I think that he would probably get his plaudits. But when you look at if you wanted to look at the midfield, they're going to give it to Kevin De Bruyne. They're going to put one of Rodri or Fabinho in there. Does Thomas Partey get in there? He probably should, but then at the same time, he's only really started playing towards the back end of the season. So I don't think we have a midfielder that could potentially be added in there. When you look at left wing, none of our left wingers have scored enough goals except for maybe Emil Smith-Rowe. Maybe you could throw him there. But then you have players like Diego Jota. He's already on almost 20 goals. And Mane, I think, is even having a bad season, is on 15. They're going to want to put Foden in there. It's going to be so difficult, because they just give it to the same people over and over and over again. It really depends on who wins the Premier League as well. Does Tierney get in over Robertson? Probably not. Tomiyasu's injured. Ramsdale has a shout. I would say that Ramsdale has a shout for sure. I would say out of everybody, because if you look at the top 2 goalkeepers, have they been amazing this season? I mean, they're probably just amazing because their teams are amazing, but Ramsdale has been standout in not a team that's not as good, with a lot of scrutiny when he first got signed to Arsenal, and he's much younger than they are. So I would say probably Ramsdale has a shout, but it'll be very difficult to kind of shoehorn one of our players in over the inevitable Salah, Jota, Mane, Kevin De Bruyne. All those players are kind of going to get those spots. So Trent Alexander-Arnold, it's just going to be so difficult. Cancelo will probably get the left back one. So yeah, I think maybe Ramsdale is the only one who has a shout, to be honest, which is a shame because I do think some of our players will deserve it. But I think we need to start talking about Bukayo Saka needs to be Young Player of the Year because he's definitely up there, in my opinion. Let's see. I don't even know. AFC Mush says, do you recommend footballers to take CBD, Jess? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. For me, I am a huge advocate of CBD. It's not THC. It doesn't get you high or anything like that. It gives you just the relaxing, as soon as you take it, you literally just are oh yeah, that feels good. So it's kind of I don't know if they should take it or not. It wouldn't hurt them. And it wouldn't show up on a drug test, I don't think, but that's up to them, Hendrik says, good evening, Jess. How are you? I'm good. What do you think of what do you think our players are worth on the market at the moment? Saka, maybe 100 million pounds. Well, let's look. Let's see. What I think is probably a little bit different than what it would be on the internet. But let's see. Saka, who's amazing, literally the best player I've ever seen in my whole entire life. Okay. It says on Transfer Market, which I know is not super accurate, but just live with me for a second, says $71 million, which is 60-ish, maybe 60 million pounds or something like that. I would say he's worth 100 million to us. What he'd be worth to somebody else, I think, would be maybe 60 to 80 million, something like that. I don't see anybody coming in with 100 million for Bukayo Saka just yet. But if he continues to add goals to his game and become the player that I think he is, that we all think he will become, the sky's really the limit. To us, I would not sell him for less than 100 million. Like, it would have to be like just like Grealish, somebody like a City would have to come in and give us 100 million to take him off of our plate. You know what I mean? That's what he'd be worth to us. Similar to even like West Ham. To them, Declan Rice is worth over 100 million. To people on the outside, they'd probably be like, okay, we're not going to buy him at that price. But I would say Saka is definitely worth 100 million to Arsenal. And then you look at like Martinelli and ESR, I would say they're less than that. But I wouldn't even consider selling them at this point. But Bukayo Saka in particular, he's worth so much to us. Like, even if you look at Odegaard now, we bought him for 30. I think like he's probably even almost doubled in value already. So I think our players are ticking up the ladder. They really are. I wonder how much it would cost for like a Man City to buy somebody like Ben White. Because we bought him for 50. Like, we definitely wouldn't sell him for any less than like 80. Because Maguire, Slabhead, set the standard for center backs, English center backs in the Premier League. So yeah, I think our players are going up there. But Saka, I wouldn't sell him for anything less than 100 million, and I would not sell him. Would not. Let's see. Dublin says it would be better if Terry didn't give Lee Gunner a platform for his nonsense, if I'm honest. So here's the thing is, I know Terry very well, and he lets different types of Arsenal fans have their say on the channel, me being one of them. So you guys like my opinions, I think, and I'm pretty balanced for the most part. And I do the same show as Lee does with Terry on Wednesdays. Gal gets to say whatever he wants. George has been on before. Curran has been on before. Souls has been on before. And any Arsenal fan that has an opinion, including you guys, if you ever wanted to, you could get the link to give your opinion. Lee Gunner has a huge platform. He's a very well-known Arsenal fan. So from Terry's perspective, he's not an Arsenal fan. He's somebody that gives fans a voice. For him, it's not really in his best interest to not allow Lee to have an opinion. Whereas like for my channel, I wouldn't have Lee on because he doesn't share not like we have to have the same opinions, but I wouldn't necessarily have him on my channel. I don't think it would be good for me. But it's not necessarily bad for Terry. So I understand why we don't love seeing him represent the fan base. Equally, there are Arsenal fans like me that represent the fan base on the football terrace. So you just have to watch on those days. I just wouldn't watch on the Lee Gunner days. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of where I kind of stand on that. Let's see. S says, I don't want Nunez. Why not? Why not? And S, you're absolutely correct. They're normally filled with Liverpool and Man City players. I think that's why it will be very difficult to advocate for any of our players. And let's be honest, like Saka doesn't get in over Mo Salah. He really doesn't. At the beginning of this season, Salah was, I think in some parts of Liverpool's season earlier on when they really weren't, before AFCON, Salah was doing everything. He was really not, I wouldn't say he was keeping them above water, but he really was performing at a high level where Mane really wasn't. So it would be difficult to advocate, for our players in that way. Even everybody that's playing on left wing, if they don't have more goals than Mane, what are you going to do? In the midfield, it's going to be Kevin De Bruyne, like it just is. We just, maybe next season, but not this one. Let's see. Guys, go ahead and drop your questions in. I do want to, let me see. I'm going to star some of them. as well to make sure I don't lose them. And I do want to talk about Saliba as well and how he can fit in um, next season. We've also been linked with and have set from a reliable source as well that we've put in an offer for Araujo. Was that what his name is, from Barcelona? He scored a goal the other day, another center back. So I want to know what you guys think about how the center back group is going to look next season. There's been some disrespect, in my opinion, to Gabriel, that he would just naturally lose his spot to Saliba. So I want to know. And no, you guys are okay. I'm not saying that CBD is not drugs, you guys. I'm not advocating for drugs, okay? CBD is not drugs. Just in case you guys think so. It's not, I promise. Hakuna Matata. Hold on. Don't spam the chat. Let's see. He says, Jess, Arsenal is moment FC like United. What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm just starring some of these to make sure. Okay, Hakuna Matata. Okay, I'm gonna put you on a little timeout. You're just doing the most right now. Sorry. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and you guys could still put in questions, but I made sure I start some of them so I didn't miss them as the chat goes up. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel. Amir Z says, "Hi Jess." Hi Amira. Do you think we have one of the weaker squads in the Premier League when you compare the quality of each team starting 11 to their bench? That's a deep question. Okay. Do you think we have one of the weaker squads in the Premier League when you compare the quality of each team starting 11 to their bench? I don't think. Okay, so let's look at this. So I would say this only probably applies to the top 5, top 6. Let's say top 6, right? Because I don't think West Ham have a stronger squad than us. I don't think Wolves have a stronger squad than us. So I would take everybody else and those 2 teams out completely. So what we are talking about is Man City, Liverpool, who we definitely have a weaker squad than. Chelsea, we definitely have a weaker squad than. Manchester United, on paper, have a stronger squad than us. The thing about Manchester United that's interesting and about their depth of squad is it really depth if it's unwilling to come out there and make a difference on the pitch? You saw when they played against Atletico in the Champions League, even though they have all this depth and they were able to bring in Matic and Mata and Jesse Lingard and whoever else they decided to bring in, they didn't make any sort of difference. And not only that, the team that was out there, as good as they are on paper and as much as they're being paid, are they really that good? I have a question around, is it just they spent a lot of money on these players, or are they actually good? Beyond Pogba, Sancho, Rashford on his day, but he's not really in good form right now. Ronaldo and Varane and Bruno Fernandes on his day. I don't think beyond that their squad is that strong. I don't really think Mata and Matic are very good. I don't think Delo or Tellez or Aaron Wan-Bissaka are really that good. Even though they spent money on those players, I don't think they're very good. Bailly, is he really that good? Is he even there anymore? Lindelof, De Gea's quality. So let's say 6 players out of their starting group. But when you really peel back the layers, when they got rid of Martial and Donny van der Beek, what quality do they really have on the bench that's really significant and actually comes out there and makes a difference? I would say there needs to be a question around, is there actually as much quality in that United side as we think? Then you look at Spurs. I don't really think that they have a lot of quality on the bench. They have players, but is there a lot of quality? Are the players that are coming out there actually able to do something? They had what's that guy's name? The Dutch one, Bergwijn. He came on. Is he really that good? Not sure. He does kind of come out there and score a goal every once in a while, but is he really that good? Not sure. I would say we have weaker than the top 3, but it's it's subjective for the next two in Spurs and Manchester United, because even though we don't have like tons of depth, right? So we have Leno, he's a really good goalkeeper. He's another number one. That's depth. Either you have Martinelli or Emil Smith Rowe coming off the bench. Either one of those is pure quality coming off the bench. You have Pepe, that's sometimey. Tavares, Lakanga, those two players for me are quality young players that could step in and do a job. And then you have Nketiah. So we definitely have weaker than the first three, but beyond that, I think it's very even right there with Spurs and Man United. Just because you spend a lot of money on players doesn't necessarily mean that they're quality. And so I would say the top three have more quality than us. It definitively, like they just do in their first team and in their bench. So I hope that answers the question. All right, let's move on. Okay, Tony says, is there anyone linked you flat out wouldn't take? We all have our options A's and option B's, but how about straight up no way? Example, I'm never Neves. Yeah, I would say Neves is probably on my list, especially after we played Wolves both times, and I thought he was. Here's the thing: is I don't want anybody who look at Thomas Partey. He's world class, right? But he wouldn't be considered world class if we had played against Man City and Liverpool and he looked average, and he didn't. He looked very similar to those players. Like he could have been on Man City or Liverpool. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. Like players that play on upper mid-table teams that have been linked with us, when they play against us, do they look like they could play with us, or do they look significantly worse? Wolves is not a shit side, and neither is Leicester. But when I see and Tielemans didn't play against us this last time, but I've kind of felt like this about him anyway, that when they play against us, against Thomas Partey and Xhaka midfield, do they look better than Xhaka or Thomas Partey? Not really. And so do I really want somebody that doesn't look even as they're not really standing out? If they weren't linked to us, we would not be looking at them, right? And so, yeah, Neves looks good against Brighton. Neves looks good against Norwich. Neves looks good against Newcastle. But what about when they play against Chelsea or Spurs or us or Man United? What do they look like? And so for me, Neves is definitely one of those where I'm like, I think he's at his level. It's funny because I've spoken to Terry about this, and personally, I think Neves doesn't make the step up to a top 4 team, but Basuma could. I think Basuma is superior to Neves in that position. They do different things, but in terms of breaking up play and being that screen in front of the back four as a single pivot, I think Basuma really does that at an elite level. Like he could play for a top 4 team, whereas Neves, I think he's kind of where he's gonna be at, especially because if you don't look better than Xhaka when we play against you guys, I don't want you. And if people don't like that Xhaka gets bypassed, Neves, when we played against Wolves, Neves got bypassed 5 times by our midfield. So if our midfield is not good and he's getting bypassed by us, then what are we doing here? So for me, Neves is definitely one of those. Tielemans is another one. Appreciate both players and think they're very good in terms of what they do for their teams against lower level opposition. But I think beyond glimpses of quality in higher level games, I don't really see them making a real difference in our team. I don't think they're significantly better than Granit Xhaka, and that's really what we need. So those two for sure I would not take. Ollie Watkins is another one. Don't want him anywhere near Arsenal. I don't see it. Again, if you can't make any headway against White and Gabriel, I don't want you. I don't. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how I look at it. I want players that are going to kind of elevate us. And if we were not linked with them, would we be looking at them? Would they stand out? And I think that's the difference is sometimes you watch players and when they play in their team against lower level opposition, they look really good, but you kind of have to see what they're doing against equal or above level. Because at this point, we're looking for players that are going to be able to take us into the top 4, sustain top 4 and get us going up the table. And I don't really see any of those players really doing that for us. Let me see, is there anybody else? There's circumstances that I would take Dominic Calvert-Lewin in, but it's like if he was cheap and if he was the second option, not the first. So if it was João Felix plus Dominic Calvert-Lewin at 30 million because they got relegated, those are the circumstances in which I would take Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but not as the number one option at 60 million, if that makes sense. Let's see, who else have we been linked to? Douglas Luiz, don't want him. Don't think he's good enough. Another one that an opportunity to show that he could be just as good, if not better, than the midfielders that we had. And a perfectly, like, there was no excuse really for him not to play well. They're playing at home and they rested during the week. So, like, what was your excuse for being shit against us? I don't want Douglas Luiz either. Yeah, those are probably the players that I would just say, like, nah, like, there's just no way I would take them in any circumstances. Rancid Pumpkin says, is Arteta the manager of the season if we get top four? I think the manager of the season ends up being whatever manager wins the league. That's kind of what I would say. And I would say, just on like a sidebar, that if I had to nominate somebody else beyond Klopp or Pep who will win the Premier League, I would say Eddie Howe has a shout coming in when he did. I know they spent money, but he still had to organize the team and get them out of the relegation zone. I think he would have a shout, in my opinion. Arteta would have a shout because we were not really in the conversation for top four, and he has done an excellent job. And just like Eddie Howe, you could say, well, you guys spent money, so of course you guys should have got better. But it's not that linear. I don't think you just spend money and all of a sudden it's just fine again. Like, you do have to coach, you do have to get the players up, you do have to get them on the training ground and make them better. And I think Eddie Howe has done that with Newcastle. They look completely different. And Arteta has done that with Arsenal. Another coach that I think has done an excellent job is Patrick Vieira. I think they've spent money, they've backed him. And I think it's a testament to what they're doing that Conor Gallagher and Tyreek Mitchell and Mark Gahey have all gotten called up to the English national team. I know that sometimes, it's like, okay, well, this player was out and this player was out. But ultimately, having three players that play for you getting called up to the England national team is not easy. So I think Patrick is doing a good job as well. Maybe not manager the season levels, because obviously they'll finish somewhere mid-table. But I think he's doing a really good job nevertheless. But ultimately, I do think it has to be whatever manager wins the Premier League, because that's the hardest thing to do. And it has to be either Klopp coming back from like 9 points down in January to winning the league in the dying days of the campaign, or Pep holding off a really strong Liverpool side to win it. It has to be either one of them. But Arteta would have a shout for me, because we were never supposed to be in that conversation. But that's kind of how I think about it. It has to be the manager that won the league, unless somebody does something extraordinary. Let's see. Z Gold says, Jess, I'm not saying that this will happen, but if you fail to make top four, will you see the season as a massive failure considering how poor Spurs and United have been? No, because I do think that, as much as people don't really want to hear this, is sometimes it's not just where you finish in the table, it's can you see the progress? And we have made progress. If we finish 1 or 2 points outside of the top four, which is very, like, it could happen. That doesn't mean that what we saw was a mirage. Like, we know we're playing better football. We know that we're scoring more goals, and our defense is a lot more solid. And we're still 2 or 3 players away from really being a team that should be finishing in the top four definitively. Like, we need a striker, like a good striker that can put the ball in the back of the net at least 10 to 15 times this season. We also need another midfielder, probably need another right back. Like, there's some positions that haven't been filled. So I can't necessarily say that, like, knowing that we have glaring issues, that I feel like it's a massive failure, because even though we're doing a lot better, I don't think the gap between us and United and Spurs is that big. I really don't. And so it could really go to anybody. It's too close to say that it would be a failure if we didn't get it, even though, like, what has been the gap? Like, there hasn't really ever been a gap between any of the teams since we've all kind of announced ourselves as the 3 teams that are like fighting for that top 4 spot. There's been like 1 or 2 points in it. So can it really be looked at as a failure, especially when you look at if we had Spurs final games, knowing how we play against the lower level opposition? Yeah, for sure. Playing a lot of home games against lower level opposition, yeah, that would be a massive failure. But we still have to play Chelsea. We still have to play Spurs. We still have to play Man United, a lot of tough away games as well. So I don't say it would be a massive failure. What I do think it would be is a disappointment. Maybe an opportunity missed because we're just not really there as a team. I don't think it would be anything that Arteta has done. I think he's getting the maximum out of the group that he has. That's really what I believe. I don't think that there's anything else you can squeeze out of this group. We're playing at our maximum. This is it. Without a new striker and without another midfielder, this is who we are. Without, depth, more depth of quality, we don't have more than this. So I do think that a massive failure would be an overstatement because there was never a gap. We were never 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points clear. It's always been 1 point here, 2 points here, 3 points here. We have had games in hand, but again, just like rivals were quick to always remind us, is that our games in hand were Chelsea, Wolves, and Liverpool. And those are very difficult games. So massive failure, no. Disappointment, yes, for sure. That would be my answer to that. Let's see what you guys are saying. Nashville Gunner says disappointment is not a failure. Disappointing is not a failure. For me, it wouldn't be a massive failure. I would be hurt. I would be hurt because I would think that whoever got it is a team that's not massively better than us. So it would be a little bit disappointing. And I understand the whole Spurs and Man United have been so bad, but I also think we have to have a realistic look at, are they actually performing really badly, or is this who they are? Because I don't necessarily feel like they're really performing that poorly. I think that's who they are. I think we're all very even for different reasons. Man United, very expensively assembled squad, not really having the unity and the culture and that level of mentality to really compete. Spurs, a very front-loaded team that has great attacking players, but really nothing behind it. And then Arsenal, a team that has the culture and the mentality and the cohesiveness, but maybe not the clinical edge that a Spurs has, that a Man United has, So I think we're even because of the deficiencies that each team has. And so them massively underachieving or massively or playing so poorly, I think is an overstatement and really not a clear and honest assessment of both teams, to be honest. Let's see. Nexus says, I don't think we're even. I think Arsenal are better than both United and Spurs. I think we have a better team in terms of our cohesiveness and stuff like that. But I would not be surprised if a lack of clinical edge is the reason why we don't make the top 4. We're winning games by 1-goal margins, and these games really should be put away. And I think that might have something to do with the striker that we have up there. Love Lacazette, think he's doing a good job, but ultimately when you have somebody like Harry Kane, it does give you an edge in games that you probably shouldn't be winning. And right now we kind of have to be perfect to win. Not perfect, but we have to perform very, very well. I think that's the difference. Saswat says, given Arteta's comments about Adu improving relations with Watford, are there any signings you can imagine Arsenal making from them in case they get relegated? Almost a sure shot. Well, yeah. I mean, I can see it, to be honest. Let's see. Who do they have? The guy that did the bicycle kick on us can come. I think he scored another goal as well, or maybe 2 in the last weekend. So he looks kind of good, but not just him. I do think Emmanuel Dennis would be a nice option to bring in off the bench. Another quality rotational option in the front 3, because I know he can play striker and off the left. So he's somebody that I would look at. Ismail Sarr is a player that I think is really talented. That could play off of the right, that could replace Nicola Pepe if he were to leave. Those are 2 players that I would look at right away. And I also would like to see maybe us loan players to them. What would be nice is if we could keep our players close. in England and close to like where we are in London and stuff like that. So being able to loan some of our academy players that aren't really, that are kind of above under 23s, but not really ready to play for the first team, it'd be nice to be able to loan them out to Watford. So those are two players that I would take, to be honest. Let's see. I don't blame like Lacazette. I don't blame Lacazette like 100%. And like blaming Lacazette is not me blaming Lacazette. It's us not being in a position to upgrade the striker position in this past summer. That's not Lacazette's fault. I said this a lot during the summer when we were looking at Tammy Abraham, is that this is an opportunity lost, not because Lacazette won't leave, but because we did not move him on sooner and we put him on big money. Not only that, there was an opportunity to sell him to Roma, and we decided to keep him so that we can maintain his value because they weren't willing to give us what we thought he was worth. So it's really the club's fault that we were not able to take advantage of an opportunity to bring in a better striker this past summer. So is it Lacazette's fault? No, Lacazette is who he is. We should have moved him on before. But so it's not Lacazette's fault, but not having a clinical striker could be an issue to why like we don't finish in the top four, because we have two kids or three kids rotating in those wide positions, and they're good, but they can be inconsistent. And then you have Lacazette, who's really kind of taken on that facilitator role, but you can see is kind of struggling to be a striker. That's not their fault that the team is configured in that way. We know who Lacazette is, so it's not Lacazette's fault, if that makes sense. Let's see. Cuco Hernandez or whatever his name was. Yeah, he looked pretty good. Can't lie. Let's see. Nashville says improving player relations with Watford means loaning players to them more than us taking their players. Yeah, and that could be really what it is, because we want to keep our players close to us and keep them in an environment that feels similar to Arsenal, not necessarily in quality of where you're playing, but like vicinity and like all that kind of stuff. Being near is what I'm seeing. Yeah, Aziz could be loaned there. That would be probably a good move for him, because the one that he had, I think at, where was he at? Portsmouth? It didn't really work out that well. Let's see. Z Gould says, do you really think you need 3 players to comfortably finish in the top 4? I think we need at least a striker for sure. I think that if I were to fast forward to the end of the season and say, and we finished 5th, I would bet money that it was because in games that we should have been ahead or clear, we weren't, because we weren't clinical in the final third, and we were holding on to 1-goal leads, and it didn't work out for us. So I think the striker is definitely it. Do I think that with a striker, if we had the exact same team, but we had Vlahovic in our team, would we finish top 4 easily? Yes, I do. I think we would be clear. But I do think that we need to be able to just close out games a lot quicker. And that could be an issue. Also, like even in the Liverpool game, had we had put that 1 or 2 chances away, where Martinelli had gotten clear on the end line and had somebody running across the front post, we might have been up in the Liverpool game. So I think that is kind of the difference here right now for us, is the striker. But do we need another midfielder to take us to another level? Yes. Do we need probably a backup right back? Yes. But the striker is really the one that's really standing out to me. Ishak says, what do you think of that? It's been said that Spurs game against Arsenal is going to be 2 weeks into May. It's going to be so far, like, because basically what they want is it to be the deciding game for the top 4, so that they can get as many people watching it. And so it's going to be the worst experience of our lives if we are not clear by then. I would love for us to be clear by April. That would be ideal, is for them to have fallen off and for us to have been so good. But would I be surprised if we got to the 2nd week in May and that was the deciding game? No, I wouldn't be surprised. So what we don't want is for that game to be a must win for us. If we do what we're supposed to do, then that game could be a just don't lose, you know? And it's still a difficult game because going to the toilet bowl and they're going to be all up for it or whatever, it'll be difficult. But as long as that game is not a must win, I think we'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, of course, broadcasters want it to be the blockbuster game, because they didn't get to have it before, so they're going to put it in the most difficult spot for us, but ultimately the best spot for them. And we just have to kind of suck it up. Let's see. You guys have some comments here about Lacazette. Happily Egg says Lacazette isn't mobile enough, but ESR stopped him scoring against Villa. Yeah, that was interesting. I thought ESR was kind of desperate to get on the score sheet and kind of mess things up there. But Lacazette has had many opportunities to get to the front post and score goals. ESR was like, yeah, you're not going to do it this time. I got it. And it kind of didn't work out. Polymation says Laka doesn't have the energy to play how Arteta wants. So this is something that I did want to touch on. In the most recent Arsenal Vision podcast, they had a whole section on Lacazette, and it got a little bit heated, not too heated, but it was like a very interesting conversation around this desire from some of the fan base to try to get all four of our young players out there at once: Martinelli, Saka, Odegaard, and Smith Rowe, because those are our best players, and Lacazette is blocking the path, or even Xhaka is blocking the path, right? And so I'm wondering, from your guys' perspective, do you think that in the last couple of games in particular, Leicester, Liverpool, and Aston Villa, we played well in all three games, obviously getting 2 wins out of 3. But Lacazette not really playing that well. The last game that I think I could say that he played well in might have been like Brentford, or, where I was like, Lacazette had a really good Lacazette game. He did well towards the end of the second Wolves game, but if he had not scored that goal that Jose Sa really, handball, like he didn't handball it because he's a goalkeeper, but the own goal from Jose Sa that we credit to Lacazette, had he had not scored that, I think we would have had a different opinion on how Lacazette played in that game. So do you guys think that we are winning because of Lacazette, or playing well because of Lacazette, or despite him? Because there's kind of a split in the fan base right now that he's kind of holding us back. And if we put Martinelli through the center, or we put ESR through the center, we could do more. We'd have a more dynamic front line that can really put pressure on the defense, because it is a problem, really. Like, and not, this isn't to really crap on Lacazette, but it is an issue, because defenders know, like center backs know, they don't really have to mark him. And so what that does is it frees them up to double team on Martinelli or Saka. And that's inevitably what happens every single time, is if the center backs have to worry about a combative and fast center forward that can run in behind, then they can't really just sit around and double team on Saka and Martinelli. They have to kind of stay honest. And that also pushes them back. But I think with the way that Lacazette kind of plays and the fact that he really drops in, it leaves the center backs with not a lot to do, or really easy double team job on either one of our wingers. So do you guys think that we are, maybe overemphasizing the good things that Lacazette does and not giving enough credit to maybe a Martinelli? Maybe he could do the same things, holding the ball up and distributing to our wide players or whatever. Or are we being ungrateful to Lacazette and almost disregarding the things that he's doing and not giving him enough credit? I do think that Tim Stillman made the most honest point, I think, here, because I do think Lacazette does a lot of really good things, and I don't take for granted what he does do, but he still plays for Arsenal Football Club. So even though he kind of is what he is, he still should be required to make front post runs. He should be required to give the center backs a difficult time. He should be required to not be standing on his heels in the box. He should be required to, instead of like, shoot when it's time to shoot and pass when it's time to pass. And just because we're kind of like, well, he's going to be leaving at the end of the season, it's going to be fine. Ultimately, some of the things that he is doing and the things that he's not doing could cost us. So I think that's something that is being spoken about and will be spoken about a lot until the end of the season. Let's see. Happily Egg says you are having to rely on goals coming from your wings. It can be done if you have two fullbacks who can make a lot of assists. Um, yeah, right now we don't really have that. Happily Eggs, you have Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson. You have a system that's pretty much that you don't really have a center forward that, especially in like the last couple of years, Jada's made that a little bit different. But your center forward was more of a facilitator. Firmino has tons of goals as well. I'm not saying he doesn't score goals, but it was really Salah and Mane scoring a lot of goals and your fullbacks getting a lot of assists. We don't really have that. So, yeah, it's difficult for us. Sirisen says Laka is leading on the pitch. He is controlling the players and links up play brilliant. He is playing an unselfish role, but he is off form, no doubt. Let's see. Nashville says Martinelli does not have the distribution. I kind of agree with that. I do think that I don't think we need Martinelli to be like a number 10 type, but I don't think he has even what Lacazette has in terms of being able to hold up the ball and do those little 1-2s with Odegaard and Party. I do think we would miss out on that if Lacazette wasn't playing there. Derek says Lacazette needs to go. His time is up. I mean, I think a lot of people feel like he's going to leave at the end of the season. But from now until the end of the season, is there an opportunity to try something different? Or is it too risky to try something different now with everything that's on the line? Sunil says, both in my opinion, he is one of the main reasons why we have transformed into a consistent top 4 team. And he is one of the reasons why we are not better than what we are now. I mean, we probably just have just enough to make top 4 with Lacazette, but could it be so much easier if he wasn't there and it was somebody else? Absolutely. I think Sunil makes a very good point there. Polymation says Lacazette will be difficult to replace. His footballing IQ is so high, but he is not a threat going down the middle. Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess that could lead us into the striker conversation that I want to have as well. What kind of striker is that? We all have different ideas of what it is. And I think that player does have to have some level of ability in terms of back to goal, holding up the ball, and linking play. But some of the players that we're linked with are kind of more just running behind type guys. And I don't think you can just have that. S says ESR for me is our biggest threat from open play in our team. I'd start him over Lacazette or Martinelli. I know you love ESR. Rancid Pumpkin says people who don't get how important Lacazette is for our game don't have a clue about football. Polymation says Laka is crucial to the way we play. D Cunningham says, does Martinelli have link-up play or hold-up play? I honestly don't know what he does, and is he bringing others into the game? Here's the thing, is we're talking a lot about things that we think can happen, but we have no real idea if it could work. One thing that I know for sure, because I've seen it before, is that I don't think ESR, Odegaard, and Thomas Partey is a midfield trio that would work for us right now. I don't see it because I've seen it before. I've seen it multiple times, no matter who plays in that number 6 role, whether it's El Neni or Thomas Partey or Lakanga. When we play with Odegaard and ESR, we lose control of the midfield without Granit Xhaka. So at this point, I am willing to be totally like all in with Xhaka playing that left 8/6/whatever until the end of the season. I don't want to see anybody else playing there. Now, in the striker position, we think Martinelli can do these things, but have we actually seen it? No. And is it worth risking these next, because we don't have any easy games left. We don't have any Norwich at home games left, So could we really risk it now? I don't think so. And there's just this projection on Emile Smith-Rowe and Martinelli, in my opinion, where it's like they're these players and we can make it happen. But that's what we think they will be. Are they that now? I don't think so. I wouldn't risk it. I wouldn't risk it at all. I wouldn't. Let's see. Polymation says Lacazette needs to be a tad more selfish and looks to shoot more. I think he needs to pick the right times to shoot and pick the right times to pass, because I cannot describe to you how angry I was at him for not passing the ball to Odegaard against against Aston Villa. I thought he was so desperate to get a shot off because he wants to prove that he's a striker and get a real goal, that we lost an opportunity to go 2-0 up. If we go 2-0 up there, we don't have to bunker in and do the Rob Holding thing, which was fun, but very needless in a game where we were totally on top. And in the first 60 minutes, if we had been up 2-0 or 3-0, it wouldn't have mattered. That was a clear opportunity just squandered by Lacazette because he wanted to take a silly shot. And so he needs to pick his opportunities. There's also times where like he's in the box and there's like a clear opportunity for him to shoot. It's coming one touch to him, a cut back, and he decides to fumble around with it. He can't get his feet out from underneath him, and he tries to pass it to somebody else. Then there's opportunities at the top of the box, or even in between the top of the box and the top of the D, where instead of passing it and continuing to move on, he decides to shoot from outside the box. And it's like some way wide shot or some really soft shot to the goalkeeper. And so I do think he needs to just pick and choose his moments. And I think he's lost some confidence there. And that could be a problem towards the end of the season. But what he adds in terms of his hold-up play is very important. Your Sam Major says, no one holds up the ball like Lacazette. He's very valuable. He is. Sunil says his 1920 season killed his confidence and never fully recovered from it. Him losing any type of pace also had a big impact on him. He's never gained his dynamism back from that ankle injury that he suffered in 2019-20. You're absolutely correct there. And I'll never forget just watching him kind of lumber around as Arteta started Eddie Nketiah in front of him. That was a very dark time at Arsenal when Eddie Nketiah came back from loan at Leeds, where he was not really doing a very good job, and that he was starting over Lacazette because Lacazette wasn't really in form. Dark times, very dark times. So there's questions about Saliba from Nashville. I will get to those, but I want to talk about the striker situation first, because we kind of talked around it, but not really directly. Been linked with Osimhen, been linked with Darwin Nunez, Fabrizio Romano, who I don't think knows very much about Arsenal, but let's just say he knows something, says we're looking to bring in a top striker. Hate to break it to you guys, we're not going to be able to bring in Haaland, no matter how close he is to Odegaard. It ain't happening. So we're looking at that level below. And so this is going to be the most exciting summer, I think, for Arsenal fans, because we love a striker, we love attacking players, we love midfielders. And over the last couple windows, it's been goalkeeper, defender, goalkeeper, defender. And so we are, a defensive center midfielder. So this is going to be really where we see what an Arteta striker or attacker really looks like. And I don't think any of us really know what that looks like. We've been linked with so many different types of strikers that it's hard to pinpoint it. But what we do know is that we were willing to spend 60 to 80 million on Vlahovic. And I think that was a very good indicator of what type of striker we're looking for. Vlahovic to me is like an old school version of Harry Kane, before he became kind of like this drop in, 9.5, 10.5, whatever you want to call him. And that's kind of what it looks like we wanted. So when I look at some of the people that we're linked with, I don't really see that same profile. Like Isak and Vlahovic are nothing alike. Jonathan David and Vlahovic are nothing alike. And maybe it's because there's nothing like Vlahovic but Vlahovic, so there you go. But linked to Osimhen, linked to Darwin Nunez, I think are both very interesting players to look at. Osimhen has really hit some stride towards the end of the season. Obviously, he's had some issues. He had some injury issues. I know he had COVID before as well, but now for Napoli, he's doing a really good job. And what I like about Osimhen is he's not afraid to get his head on the ball. He's not afraid to be physical. He's also somebody that can go in behind, but it can also kind of hold up the ball, Can he do little 1-2s like Lacazette? No. But I also think the central midfielder that we bring in could maybe take away our need to have such a striker that's so involved in that. You know, if you have a midfielder that can do more 1-2s and triangles like that, you may not need that necessarily. You can go with the striker that's a little bit more of just a traditional number 9. So Osimhen is very interesting to me because I think has kind of everything that you would be looking for. He's not necessarily like a false 9, but he can hold up the ball and can pass competently. Like it's not anything special, but he can. But his threat in behind and his just like, I want to score a goal is something that we really need, that mindset. Whether it's a tap in or a headed ball or whatever, he tends to be somebody that could just make goals happen. And so I like that. My issue is that he made a really big move to Napoli and it cost them 80 million. So what are they going to expect to make now? Are they going to ask for 100 million for Osimhen? Does he even want to leave? Does he want to leave Napoli? I mean, they are one of the top teams in Serie A. Does he, they'll be in Champions League next season. So does Osimhen want to go? So that's a really interesting one. I think Osimhen would cost a lot of money. Then you have Darwin Nunez, somebody that early in the show, I told you guys this, that I spoke about earlier, like maybe at the beginning of the transfer window or something, as somebody that I had looked at and I thought he could be an Arsenal striker. Like he could be one because he has kind of everything. He can beat a man. He's quick. He can go in behind. He can head the ball. Like he can do everything. He's bigger. He's like 6'2" or something like that. And I like him. I like him a lot. He's somebody that I wouldn't like if he came in, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we got this guy. My issue is, do those goals really translate to the Premier League? I know João Felix has really struggled at Atletico, but he was scoring like 20 goals a season at Benfica. And now he's scoring like 7 goals max. So that's kind of like the levels, right? Now Simeone's teams are different, so bear with me. But is Darwin Nunez, his 20-something goals, is that 5 goals in the Premier League? Is that 10 goals in the Premier League? What is that? What does the drop-off really look like? There's no doubt in my mind that we'd be able to afford him. There's no doubt in my mind that he would want to come. But I just wonder, what the drop-off would look like in terms of, do those goals really translate from that league to the Premier League? He's also very young too, so you have to keep that in mind. And he's also linked with Atletico, so I wonder if there's an opportunity for him to go to Atletico and João Felix to come to us, because João Felix is really the player that I lean more towards into. Like that's the style that I like. Both very quality strikers. Wouldn't be upset if either one of those came in. But what do you guys think about Osimhen and Darwin Nunez in particular? Let's see. Emil Heskey, is that who you want? Davion says Osimhen is on the end of every cross. I mean, that's what you need. That's what you need. We need somebody that I need to bring back the Tierney narrative. Before the season, people loved Tierney. Now that we have Lacazette up top and he cannot get his head on balls, we're questioning whether Tierney is good in the final third. And, oh my God, Tierney, he's dead. We sell him to Real Madrid. I need somebody to bring back the narrative around Tierney. Osimhen is somebody who can do that. Darwin Nunez is also somebody who can do that. And Nkunku, he's not a striker. And I don't know. I love Nkunku. Like, you guys know I love Nkunku, but I'm not quite sure that that's what we're looking at or looking for in that player. I don't know. He can play false 9 though. He'll cost just as much as João Felix, in my opinion. I'd rather get João Felix. Saracen says Tammy Abraham is a good shout. I mean, it felt like an opportunity missed, but I wonder if you throw 60 million at Roma, if they bite. Do they bite? if we make Champions League, does Tammy Abraham says, sorry, you don't have Champions League. I'm ready to go, Jose. Tammy Abraham, I think, would fit. He's somebody that was on the outskirts of that Chelsea team, went to another league, bagged hella goals, and is now like, he's 24 years old. He's perfect. I would love Tammy Abraham at Arsenal, but what clauses do Chelsea have hiding there? What buybacks do they have? What sell-ons do they have? What do they have there that's going to make it really difficult for us to put in a bid for him at a decent price, you know? But Tammy Abraham is somebody that I would take at Arsenal. Let's see. Tammy Abraham. Davion says Osimhen is Vlahovic on steroids. T. Cal says both Osimhen and Nunez for 100 million. I don't think we need both of them. I think we need one or the other and a different type of profile. I think Osimhen and Nunez kind of cover that, not like that complete number 9 pocket. They cover that. And then you need somebody that can kind of play like a 10, false 9-ish, could maybe play out wide as well. That's where your Nkunku's and João Felix's come in. I think that's kind of what we, in terms of getting two completely different strikers. But both Osimhen and Nunez feels like kind of doubling up on a similar profile. I don't think we need to do that necessarily. Let's see. Polymation says, if we get Champions League, I would take Lewandowski for a year or two. The youth would thrive with his experience. I mean, I would take Lewandowski as well, but he's not coming to Arsenal. You know what I mean? That would be insane. I would take him though. Seswat says, I've watched Napoli a lot this season, and I've seen that the players rarely seek out Osimhen. It's usually a weird long ball he has to chase down or nearly cross, or early cross. He'll thrive as a focal point at Arsenal. And you know, who he reminds me of a little bit? He reminds me of Aubameyang a little bit. I can't lie. Like, you know, peak Aubameyang, but willing to get his head on the ball. I know Aubameyang is scoring headers now at Barcelona, but he's a little bit more on the physical side. He's somebody that can kind of get in and amongst center backs. And so I think Osimhen would be good at Arsenal. I don't have an issue with him at all. Let's see. S says, I've only watched one YouTube video of Osimhen and he didn't pass my eye test. Okay, S, I know you have a very high standard when it comes to the football that you want to watch. So, but who's the striker that you would want then? Who passes your eye test then? Let's see. Could you imagine what Napoli will do to us, though, after all the years of us taking players that they really wanted? And then we're like, hey, we want your striker. Jeez, like, I think it would be difficult. Let's see. Daddy Pig says João Felix has a poor work rate. Do you think so? I think his work rate has gone up a lot more since Simeone has basically kicked him up the ass. Like, you know what I mean? He was very like he was kind of like, my shit don't stink. Like, you know, I'm this young player. I'm the newest thing out here. Simeone looks like he's whipped him into shape, and no, he's never going to be like a workhorse type, but I think on a team where it's a requirement, he does it, you know, so, but I hear what you're saying. Nashville Gooner says, girl commentator bias. He's like 6'2". I like him a lot. Yeah, fair enough. I do love Nkunku, you guys. Like, don't worry. I rate him. T. Cal says, João Felix will not have room to breathe in the Premiership. He will flop. Fair enough. You know, that's another, but here's the thing is that I wouldn't mind João Felix plus somebody else. It has to be plus somebody else. Plus somebody else's, plus Tammy Abraham, plus Osimhen, plus Darwin Nunez, plus Dominic Calvert-Lewin, somebody that I know for a fact can get in and amongst those center backs and make things happen. João Felix is a different profile. Sometimes you'll need different solutions for different problems. And so I do have that fear about João Felix, like, how will he do against the center backs? But if some people think that Martinelli can do it and ESR could potentially do it, then João Felix can do it as well in certain games, certain circumstances, not against Virgil van Dijk, you know, not against Virgil van Dijk, but, you know, there's some center backs in this league that are just total shit, and they could do something against them. Davion says João Felix would be immense for us. Let's see. Davion says Nunez and Schick are bigger risk than Osimhen. You really like Osimhen. I see that. Let's see. Pius Oku, thank you so much for your super chat. Says João Felix did not play as good as Saka in the Portuguese league, yet Atletico paid 110 million. Saka should be nothing less than 120. Fair enough. I mean, Saka, I said, was either 100 million and above. Like, you know what I mean? No less than 100 million for Bukayo Saka. So I agree. Sima N16, Darwin Nunez fits the age and flair we need. The one thing that I will say, you guys, is that I do worry about having too many kids in the team, especially somebody like Darwin Nunez that's coming from a league that's not as good as the Premier League by kind of a long way. So that's why I kind of like the idea of Tammy Abraham or even Osimhen. And I know Osimhen is quite young as well, but they played in leagues where there's more competition, especially Tammy Abraham. He's 24, and I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is 25. So if you're going to bring in somebody young, also bring in somebody young and inexperienced with somebody that's a little bit more experienced and not super old. Obviously, we're not looking at 27, 28-year-olds, right? But somebody that has a little bit more experience under their belt, like Tammy Abraham could first day out the gate, first game of the season, play for Arsenal, whereas maybe Darwin Nunez would need some time. So I would say you don't want to bring in two 21, 22-year-olds, especially if they played in leagues that aren't really that competitive. You know what I mean? Sunil says, Osimhen is a guaranteed success. Nunez is a much higher risk. Exactly. Like, I do agree with that. I think Osimhen is somebody that could probably just play first day of the season. Tammy Abraham, first day of the season. Like, I think they could just step straight in, where Nunez would probably take a little bit more time, and that's where you have to really think about it. Let's see. Captain Joka says, Nunez isn't afraid to get injured for that goal. He's aggressive and quick. He is. He's and I hate to be like, reduce it to this, but I'm very partial to like South American players. Like, I just think the work rate is different. The hunger is different. I loved Alexis Sanchez. I love players like that. And Darwin Nunez has that about him, just like Martinelli. He has that about him. There's something different there. So I do agree with that he has something different about him. He's very aggressive and he will pretty much die for a goal. Let's see. Prince Tutu says, Jess, I think Osimhen is a good fit in with this Arsenal team. He is the perfect striker we need. Young, hungry, strong, good finisher, and wants to be at the end of every ball. Fair enough. I mean, there's some good options. There's some really good options out there. So even though we can't get Holland, I don't think we should be like devastated. Let's see. Diallo says, Jess, we need Alexia Patelis. That girl can bag. Look, if Arsenal women get to the semifinals, we're going to have to play against Barcelona women. I hate to be negative. It's a certain loss. That team is insane. And Alexia Putellas is by far like the best female footballer out there. She's insane. I wonder what she would look like up against like men. You know what I mean? Polymation says, I want nothing to do with Tammy Abraham. He's a tall Eddie Nketiah. No, he's not. But I hear you. S says, Isak is better than Abraham. He just plays in the Burnley of La Liga. Fair enough. Mikey says, Osimhen and Nkunku would be mad. Yeah, you guys are really doing the Nkunku thing. I mean, I would love Nkunku. Like, I would. I just wonder, like, I mean, Osimhen and Nkunku, like, that's the dream, right? Like, if you're like, okay, I'm going to bring in two players and they're ready to go and we're just going to do whatever. Osimhen's going to cost you 100 million and Nkunku's going to cost you 70. I mean, how are we going to get the midfielder? That's just what I think about. Let's see. Tyre says, I'm a Liverpool fan. Can we have Martinelli from you lot? No, you cannot. Sorry. But he's definitely a Liverpool type player. That's why Klopp is salivating at the mouth every single time you watch Martinelli play. Not to put anything out there in the air, but like a Luis Diaz, Martinelli, Jota front line is probably a wet dream for Liverpool fans. Let's keep it real. Let's see. Let's see. Davion says we need Osimhen hype and Felix hype. Osimhen type and Felix type. I kind of agree with that as well. We need two different types. But I think Felix and Nkunku can do similar things, but Nkunku is more hyped right now. He's in really good form right now, but they can do similar things as a false nine. So there you go. Let's see. Hakum says, I like DCL, but my only worry is that he's never available to play. He looks a little injury prone. He does. He looks a little injury prone. So that's something to look at. But of course, Edu, Arteta, the team, transfer team will do all their due diligence to make sure we're not buying some broken player or whatever. But at the right price, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin would be a good addition, but it just wouldn't be as exciting as bringing in like an Osimhen or something like that, right? Do we want the more exciting player, the better option? I don't know. It just depends. S says Felix or Isak for me. Fair enough. Gold, would you take Richarlison? No, I don't think he's an Arsenal player. Again, love Brazilian players, love his work rate. I think he definitely needs to run for the hills and get off of Everton as quickly as possible. But he just doesn't feel like somebody that would fit in with the culture at Arsenal. And so I think he'd be perfect somewhere else. I think he should go to like a PSG or something. I think he definitely should be playing Champions League football for sure. He's too good to be playing in the championship. It's just a disgrace. So yeah, you guys were basically all on the same page. We want all the strikers, every single one of them. Fair enough. Let's see. And we can have a center midfielder conversation later on in the week. We have plenty of time for that. Let's see. All right. So also Saliba. So where does he fit in? I think that's kind of what I want to talk about because, okay, Osman says, Jess, do you rate Saliba? I don't. I do. I rate Saliba very highly. Nashville Gunner says, are you concerned about Saliba settling in England, being the only French speaker in the squad if Pepe and Laka leave? He wouldn't be because Gabriel can speak French. He actually speaks French way better than he speaks English. So he wouldn't be totally asked out there. But I hear what you're saying. Unless we get Nkunku. We're also linked with Diaby. We could also get a War. We probably will have another French speaker in there. I'm like 90% sure we will get some sort of French speaker. We always have one or two or three. But Saliba, I don't worry about him settling in because I think he's very experienced for a 20-year-old, and he's done enough growth, and he will be in a really good environment at Arsenal now, in the environment that we have now. So I don't really worry about that. And I also don't think we have to worry about, in the past, we bought players and brought them in and said, save us because you're our only option. When we bring in Saliba this time, we won't have to start him right away. You can play Ben White and Gabriel, and you can ease him in over time. So I don't worry about Saliba that much. Of course, he'll have to take English lessons, and of course, he will have some growing pains because the French league is nowhere near as good as the Premier League. It'll be difficult. The strikers are different and all of that. But I really think Saliba is going to thrive. I personally think Arteta did the right thing by sending him out one more time because of his personal situation with losing his mom and needing to be closer to home because it's difficult, being so young. And now he has the confidence. Just think of Saliba off of the back of getting called up for the first time to the French national team and doing so well for Marseille. He'll probably be in the team of the season. He'll probably be in the team of the season because he's like the player he's like player of the month every month or whatever for Marseille. It's insane. So I do think that, coming off of the back of that confidence and coming back to Arsenal with a better environment, he'll settle in well. But I just wonder about how the center back situation is going to really pan out because we're not going to have Pablo Mari anymore. I'm sure we'll get rid of him. Is anybody going to miss him? I don't know. I'm not. No offense, but you weren't very good. You gave me a headache. So with Pablo Mari gone, is Saliba good enough to play on both sides? I think he does for Marseille, but for Arteta, can he do it? I think so. But we're also linked with the center back from Barcelona, Araujo, and we apparently made an offer for him. So what's that all about? We know that, and I was doing the math, like every good team has 3 or 4 really good center backs, top teams. Chelsea, Thiago Silva, Rudiger, Christensen, Aspilicueta can play back there as well. So what's that boy's name? Saliba. So they're fine. All right. Then Liverpool has Van Dijk and Gomez, who never really came back, Kanate and Matip. And Man City, they rotate between the 3 of Stones and Laporte and Diaz. And then Ake can also play there as well. So it's one of those where it's like, okay, I do think that we need 3 or 4, most likely 4, if we're going to play in Europe next season and be really, really solid. So when we do need to rotate, we're not bringing in Pablo Mari's, you know what I mean? So I think we will need 4, and Saliba will get more than enough playing time. I don't know anything about the Araujo one. I don't believe every single report, but I do touch on them because it's fun and that's my job. So, but yeah, what do you guys think about the center back situation? Do you think Tomiyasu can just fill in? Do you think we need to go get somebody else beyond Saliba? Or do you think Saliba can cover for both White and Gabriel next season if we are in Champions League / the Europa League, whatever? But I think we do need more than one. Jesse Karen. Jesse Karen in the house. I don't know why that makes me laugh so hard. So funny. Babu O. What about Rob Holding? Do you think, are Liverpool, City, or Chelsea bringing in Rob Holdings for Champions League matches? I think that kind of answers the question. I personally, so here's the thing. Holding is also there for homegrown numbers. Let's keep it absolutely 100 here. He's there for that. Saliba and Martinelli become homegrown next season. So I don't think we need to hold on to Holding like that. Holding could play for a lower level Premier League team. Maybe we send him to Watford. I don't know. But no Champions League level team or a team that wants to get into the Champions League is bringing that level of center back off their bench. That's all I'm saying. I like Rob Holding, but we're not. You know what I mean? So I do think we're going to need an extra one. And Saliba is going to be a really good option for us too. Does anybody think that Saliba will start over anybody? And if he is, who will that be? I know a lot of people are out here like, okay, well, Gabriel, he's definitely under threat. I don't know. I think we need to see Saliba actually play in the Premier League first before we say that. To be fair, a lot of that happened after he passed that ball back and it was a bad back pass and everybody was like, oh, Saliba, you're going to come right back in. So there you go. Leld says Gabriel. Okay, so he'll replace Gabriel. Mikey says the young boy at Millwall is also a future to put on the pack. Yeah, put in the pack. Yeah. I forget what his name is, but isn't he does he play for Northern Ireland or something like that? Yeah. Polymation says Holding has been a good servant to the club, but like El Neni, but not good enough for the club. And I would like to see both of them move on this summer. I would. I would like to see some of the players that start now to have to fight for their place, and maybe we upgrade on them and see what happens. But I would like to see them move on this summer because I don't see any of the Champions League teams that we aspire to be like having players like that in their team. That's all I'm saying. Let's see. Hamsik says Chelsea won the Champions League with Christensen as their backup, but there's levels. Even though Christensen is probably the worst of their center backs, he's better than Rob Holding. Let's be honest. He's better than Rob Holding. And that's the reason why Barcelona want to bring him in. I don't see Barcelona calling Rob Holding to go play. Let's see. Maki says, I think Saliba starts over Gabriel, to be honest. It's going to be so interesting. Ray says, I don't think we need another center back. Even with European games, center backs don't need to rotate as much. Injuries aside, White, Saliba, Gabriel is enough with Holding as a backup. Do you think so? Because, okay, this season, we haven't really seen Gabriel and White have to play 55 games. White is very, very, very consistent and plays every single game. But we've seen that even like over the last couple of games, I do think there's been some mental fatigue from our back line. Not really physical, but like mental, like making mistakes. That's like where Gabriel's back pass came from potentially. So I do think that we haven't really seen it, but we did see, like, do you think that we could do this week that we just did, Liverpool, Leicester, and Aston Villa throughout like almost the entire season with just those two and Saliba? I'm not sure, because if you get one injury to the three, you're really pushing it there. I do think you need another one. I wouldn't go out and spend 80 million on somebody, but I do think you need another one, and I don't think it could be Rob Holding. S says no displacing Ben White, that's for sure. Okay, so you're saying Gabriel. BX Gunner says Saliba's situation looks like Pepe, not good. What does that mean? Davion says Saliba will be on rotation. Gabriel cannot be replaced. I think Gabriel is excellent. Led says Gabriel is often opposition teams' press trigger. Yeah, that's true. But I don't think he gets pressed off the ball too much. The last time that I thought like, oh my gosh, Gabriel was against Wolves. I thought that early on in that game, he was very much so like a little bit nervous. So I hear what you're saying, but we have to see what Saliba looks like in the Premier League as well. Even though I think he's going to be excellent. Hakum says, I'm sorry, but Saliba is replacing White. Oh, wow. Seswat says it's Daniel Ballard. It is. Hakum says Gabriel is a rock. What are we saying? There's so like everybody's saying something different, and that's why I love having these conversations. Nashville Gunner says, what is Saliba's contract situation? Still think he goes to PSG this summer. We're looking to extend him, and it doesn't look like there's anything going to be wrong with that. Nothing's going to go wrong. From what both sides are kind of reporting is that Saliba wants to come back and we want to keep him. So yeah, I think we're fine. We're going to have to offer him more money. And obviously we're going to have Europe so that he can play games. But I think Saliba comes back. I don't think he goes to PSG. PSG don't like French players. They don't buy French players. They'll go after like somebody else, some German guy or some Spanish dude. They don't buy French players ever. I don't know why. Let's see. This is the point though. This is it. Ursa Major says, my God, we've come a long way from Mustafi and Papa at center back. Let's just take a beat. We're talking about, is Saliba going to come in and replace White or Gabriel? We're no longer talking about Mustafi and Socrates and David Luiz. Thank God. Like, that is a turnaround, because we've had some bad center backs over the time. Remember the other Gabriel? He wasn't very good either. Moss FC says, back three, we go for Champions League. Gabriel, Saliba, Benji, Tomiyasu as a good backup. Yeah, it would be nice to see all of them together, wouldn't it? I would love that. White. Johnny says, White not being replaced, he's class. I don't think he gets replaced. I think he's going to be the guy, and then we'll see what happens. But also Saliba is right-footed, and I'm not convinced that I think that Arteta is going to be really shifting away from the left-footed center back. I know he did it sometimes with Holding, but that's mostly because we don't have Pablo Marie. So we'll see. But I'm loving these competitions. I know you guys are saying Trusty. Austin Trusty is not coming to play for Arsenal Football Club. That's all I need to say about that. I know we own him, but he's not going to play for us. S says everybody now saying Saliba should start over Gabriel. A few months ago, he was one of the best center backs in the Prem, according to most of our fans. I mean, we like to flip flop. You know what I mean? There you go. Happily Egg says, you swing your center halves around in domestic cups and league games against weaker teams. Yeah, and that will be a good opportunity for Saliba to get used to playing in England as well. Like, I do think he's going to need some adapting, but I think once he adapts, he's going to be an absolute monster. Did you guys see the video of Deschamps when he's seen Saliba? I don't know if that's the first time that he's ever spoken to him, but you could tell that he was like, oh my gosh, like, you're a huge person, you know, because Deschamps is like down here and Saliba's up here. That guy is freaking massive. Like, it's insane. And he's so young. So yeah. Tyre says that's not true. You need at least 4 or 5 center backs because if 1 or 2 get injured, you'll be in danger. And I think that's the thing as well, is that we don't really want to be sitting here like, oh my gosh, every single time Ben White goes down, it's like, is he okay? Every single time Gabriel, you know, is not in a training photo, it's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I don't want to feel that next season. I do want us to get another center back. I've made my decision. Not like it matters what I think. Babu says Gabriel has more physicality than most center backs. I like the balance between Ben White and Gabriel. I think it's perfect. It's just whether or not Saliba, I think Saliba is more like Ben White than he is like Gabriel. So I just wonder if we'll bring in like another more physical center back to back up Gabriel on the left-hand side. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, Saliba has 2 years left, so we do need to renew him. S says Saliba is questionable in the air. In the Prem, you need a center back who is strong at heading. This is true. This is very true. Let's see. Ham6 says physicality isn't the main aspect for identifying an elite center back nowadays. I do think it is changing a little bit. I do think that he has to be competent in the air, kind of like Ben White. Like, he's nowhere near like Virgil van Dijk levels of in terms of in the air presence. Like, Virgil van Dijk eats everything up. He wins all his aerial duels, right? Ben White does his best, but he's more about positioning, so he doesn't have to be in situations where he needs to be beating people to the ball like that. So I don't think it's the main thing. But Saliba has to be intelligent. He has to be smart. I do think that he has the footballing IQ to put himself in good position so he's not getting just beat. But we'll see. Let's see. Sunil says, nah, Jess, don't put Luis in the same sentence as Papa and Mustafi. Luis was one of our best players in the last 18 months. I'm not going to say nothing. I'm not going to say anything. I can't, you guys. I can't. Because I was happy when he left. T-Cal says Gabriel left-footed, Saliba right-footed, White centrally in a back 3, Tierney and Tommy in the middle 5. You guys want to, this is what we do. We want to shoehorn these players in together. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I want to see Emile Smith-Rowe and Odegaard and Saka and Martinelli all play together. So let's like force it. You know, I don't think we're going to be moving to a back 3/back 5. This is Mikel Arteta we're talking about. Somebody sitting out. And I kind of like that idea because it keeps people on their toes. God forbid, you know, White or Gabriel thinks that their spot is like solidified. You don't want them to get complacent. So it'd be nice if you had a Saliba kind of nipping at their heels every time that he plays in a cup match or whatever. So yeah, I don't think that we're going to be playing any sort of back 3. Even in scenarios this season where you thought we probably should have, we haven't. So I don't think it's going to happen now just because we have Saliba. Ali says, Jess, do you think Saliba will get to Van Dijk level, like best in his position? I think if he stayed in France, I think if he stayed in France, he would get there in terms of like the best center back in that league. And then people would think that he's one of the best in the world. But the issue is that when he comes to the Premier League, I don't really know what his level is going to be like. And so until I see him in the Premier League, I can't really say whether or not. You know, it's like Koulibaly. People think Koulibaly is one of the best center backs in the world. A lot of that has to do with the fact that he plays in a league that there's not a lot of physicality in terms like he's way bigger than most of the strikers that he has to deal with, like beyond like 1 or 2 strikers. Like, he pretty much is the fastest and strongest guy, and then he has the experience. Though we've never seen Koulibaly play in the Premier League, so do we actually know if he's the best in the world? He probably isn't. Until you test yourself in the Premier League, it's hard for me to make that Van Dijk, if he always like let's say like Van Dijk played in La Liga or the Bundesliga, he would look amazing. But until you play against like literally the best players in the world and you just bop them every day, I don't think you can say that. You know what I mean? So I do think if Saliba was one of those that stayed in the French league for like his entire career, he would get elevated to that status because you haven't seen him in the Premier League. But let's see because I don't know. I have to see it first. And I do think there was an interesting point made by somebody that center backs are changing. And so it may be that I think Ben White is such a modern type of center back. And a lot of people are going to be seeing those types of center backs come along. And so that may leave an opportunity for Saliba becoming that type, even though he's not as physical as a Van Dijk. We'll see. I don't want to say too early because I haven't seen him play for Arsenal or in the Premier League. S says, with conceded 0 goals from a corner with Ben White this season, he's very good in the air for his size. Ben White is good in the air. I don't really understand this whole thing that he was so bad in the air. But when you look at the way that we defend does not show up in traditional metrics. So even though we're one of the better teams defensively, when you look at our center backs and where they rank in terms of like aerial duels and tackles, they're quite low. But that's because we don't put ourselves in positions where we need to be winning all these aerial duels and we need to be tackling. And I think that speaks to the intelligence and the way that we play defensively. And so Ben White to me is so smart that he doesn't have to do any of that shit. You know what I mean? Like, but when he has to, he wins, and that's great. Let's see. Ariane Rai says, out of Saliba, White, and Gabriel, who has higher ceiling? I think Ben White has the highest ceiling out of all of them so far from what I've seen. I just think because of his intelligence, which I'm not saying that Gabriel's not smart, but Ben White, I just think could be anything. He could just be anything. And he's operating on a different level. Like he's on Odegaard levels in terms of what's going on up here. And Saka as well. Saka has that as well, where they just know where to be. They know how to position their body. They never really look like they're trying hard. I think that's, to me, the sign of a player that could go really high. Most players that we've had over the years that go have the highest ceiling usually don't look like they're trying hard. Cesc Fabregas was one of those. He never looked like he was really trying hard. Vieira never looked like he was trying hard. And Ben White has that cruising along. I'm not really trying hard, but I'm like bossing the game at the same time. I'm very relaxed and I can just kind of do my thing. That goes a long way. And he's only like 24. He doesn't have to rely on his physicality to do anything. So I think Ben White has the highest ceiling. Potentially it could be Saliba, but I need to see him play in the Premier League. I don't rate that League One. I think it's so bad. So it's kind of like, I don't know what level of League One tax there is there, but it could be Saliba as well. I think Gabriel's just a little bit behind in that. But I think Gabriel could be top. Exactly. Polymation, Carzola, players that it doesn't look difficult to them, that's key to me. Nashville Gooner says, what's more important for our next captain, being scary looking or 5-yard burst? I would say be scary looking. I think Tierney is fine to be the next captain, with Odegaard probably and Ben White being my next two options. I think those are the players that I would look at for the next couple of years. Like Tierney captain and Odegaard vice captain, something like that. I think that would feel normal. I love Tierney. I think that he's the first player to be a part of this new Arsenal. Also Martinelli and Saliba as well, because they were all bought in the same window. But Tierney was the first one that we really saw play for Arsenal, and I think he kind of is the definition of what an Arsenal player looks like right now. I know that he goes in and out of form. Sometimes his injuries can be an issue, but I just don't think that there's many left backs that would fit us right now perfectly the way that he does. I think he could be our starting left back for the next 3-4 years, but I see him as our Aspilicueta. That's what I see him as. There'll probably be another younger player, more exciting player come in that we'll use, and Tierney will rotate with that person as he gets older. But he's our Aspilicueta. You need players like that. You cannot have a successful team without those players. Every single player, it's not always going to be the best in their position. I think they need to be probably 1 through 3, 1 through 5 of the best in that position in the league. But you need Tierney's, and I just feel like he's almost been disrespected over the last couple of months. I get that some people feel like he's protected, like you can't say anything bad about his performances. I have nothing. I don't feel like it's wrong to be honest about like the fact that he's been in and out of form, but you can't just get rid of Tierney and replace him with anybody. And just because that player looks more wavy or sauce or whatever, or has more tech than him on a compilation, let's just throw him in, because there's intangibles that Tierney has that you just can't replace with any old person. And he just was the first piece of the puzzle because he came before everybody else. It was him first. Obviously, he came in with Martinelli and Saliba, but Saliba went away, and Martinelli has kind of been eased in. And then you had Gabriel and Thomas Partey with Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe coming in, and then the 6 that came in this summer. And that's just been the beginning, and Tierney's been there. And I couldn't pick a better captain. I think it has to be him. With Odegaard being like vice. That would be my choice. Let's see. S says, I remember you were on to Tierney at the start of the season, just probably because of you expect way more for him at the time. Yeah, I did. And the thing of it is like, I don't think he's been on his best form this season. I think he's been in and out of it, but he has enough credit in the bank for me. And I also just feel like we are lacking that level of striker that can utilize his best quality, which is those whip balls into the box. And so we're also not using him as much going forward. So if you just adjust it a little bit and just kind of be a little bit more like, okay, well, he's not really bombing up the side as much as he was before. And so we're not having to rely on him attacking wise. And we don't really have a striker that can get on the end of crosses. It kind of makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? And so I don't think Tierney is going to be necessarily the best player we've ever seen as a left back, but there's intangibles there that you just can't get rid of. And that's why I say he's going to be more of like our Aspilicueta type, reliable, intangible, captain-like, 100%, always there for the team, leading by example, that kind of thing. Those things, you have to have them. You don't have a winning team without it. Nashville Gooner says, I agree with KT as captain. Yeah. Led says Tierney can't handle playing consecutively. His best form came after being rested for Tavares and getting proper rest, and that's fine. I think you do have to rest him, but I'd rather rest him I'd rather do that than just not have him at all, because I'm wondering. I know that like the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I get that there's other left backs out there that are like, oh, they look so great. They look so amazing. But there's the intangibles there that you have to have. Like like BX Gunner says, Nigel Winterburn. Obviously, like Sol Campbell was a beast and Kolo Toure was a beast. And then you look at like Ashley Cole was a beast. But there's always players that are kind of like, they're not the best, but when they're there, it works. And that's kind of what Tierney is. Let's see. Johnny R says Tavares was decent when Tierney was injured, but did give possession away a lot. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I would like to see Tavares get 20 minutes at the end of games that we're winning. We just haven't had more than a goal lead. And that goes back to finishing games off. If we're winning by 2 goals and we're in control, I want to see Tavares get some minutes. I want to see Thomas Partey pulled off. You know, those players, especially those two in particular, Tierney and Thomas Partey, they need rest so that we can have them at 100%. And I miss seeing Sambi and Tavares. I do. I miss them. I haven't seen them in a while. Let's see. Daniel says Aspie is probably a more natural communicator. I don't know. When Tierney was mic'd up, he looked pretty loud to me, like he was always talking, so I don't see him as being quiet. Hamsick says Tierney is our Mr. Reliable, like Monreal, but he's better. But yeah, true. Blaze says Tierney and Tomiyasu are underrated. This is why they're not appreciated so much by the Arsenal fans. I think Tomiyasu is respected, mostly because he's new as well. We like new and shiny toys, right? So Tierney, because he's been here for 3 or 4 seasons, it's kind of like, well, he's been here, so like we're bored of him now. But they are definitely underrated, and they make things like tick, and the backline balance is right with them. And unless you find somebody else that can do that, I don't want to see anybody but him. S says, Partey, do Man City take Rodri when they're 1-0 up? No, I didn't say. I said we need to be more than 2 goals up. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so against, when we're fully in control and we haven't done this in a while, but there's games where we are up by multiple goals. I just think that that's the time that you can pull off Thomas Partey, and because he's had injury problems in the past, and give Sambi 10 minutes. I don't think that that's that big of a deal, or give Tavares 10 minutes for Tierney. I'm not saying when you're 1-0 up against Aston Villa, you take him out. I think it's, if we're up a couple goals, I would like to see them be pulled off sometimes. That's all. But yeah. Let's go ahead and get out of here. That was almost 2 hours worth, but I wanted to make sure that we talked about everything. So tomorrow, let's do a midfield conversation, because there were some questions about Tchouaméni. Who do I think we should bring in the midfield? We'll do more of a deep dive on that. I'll pick my 5 options for midfield, and we can go through them player by player. You guys can have some questions, all that kind of stuff. Make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you guys want to talk about in the comment section. But I know a lot of people were like, what about the midfield? So we will talk about that tomorrow. Bellingham, all that kind of stuff, whatever you guys want to talk about. So yeah, midfield tomorrow. Probably around the same time. It feels like a good time for most people. So we'll probably do something around 9 or 10 p.m. UK time. But yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.